Well, welcome. Welcome to the University of Wisconsin Marathon County. I'm Keith Montgomery. I'm the Regional Executive Officer of UW Colleges North, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening to this important program. I actually encountered Japanese internment back in when I was living in Canada. One of my colleagues in Canada had been interned in Canada when she was an infant and toddler, and she remembers it up when she was 4 or 5 years old as well. So I'm really interested in knowing more about internment here in the United States. So thank you for being here, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Mary Ellen Marnholtz of the Walk in Your Shoes organization that's responsible for bringing this program here to us this evening. Mary Ellen?
Thank you. History. Something that happens all around us, and sometimes we get caught up in it as it occurs. For nearly a decade, a group of local educators, known simply as A Walk in Their Shoes, has been bringing stories of living history to the students of north central Wisconsin. Many of these stories center on the lives of young people, very much like our students, who have lived through momentous times and events as teenagers. As a group, we gravitate toward these stories because we want our young people to understand that history is not dry and crumbling in a desert, or only to be found in the pages of a book or on some website. History is the story of ordinary individuals who find themselves living in and through times that they never could have imagined. And as our generous donors provide these amazing stories to our county's young people, we are also able to share them with you. Tonight, A Walk in Their Shoes is honored to share the story of a diamond in the desert and barbed wire baseball with you. It is a gripping story of Americans placed in internment camps during World War II, their only crime being of Japanese descent. In camps, mainly across the West, these Americans lost everything, their homes, their businesses, but they did not lose hope. This is the story of how the American pastime of baseball gave many young Japanese Americans a sense of dignity and hope. Tonight we will hear from 3 moving speakers: Tetsu Furukawa, Howard Kenzo Zenemura, and historian and author Carrie Yo Nakagawa. Up at bat first will be Carrie. Carrie describes himself as a multimedia person and takes tremendous pride in his projects of passion. He is the founding curator of the Diamonds in the Rough international exhibit that has been displayed at the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, as well as in Tokyo, and museums across the country. To make the exhibit more interactive, he produced and directed the Diamonds in the Rough documentary with his godpapa, Noriyuki Pat Morita. He wrote the books Through a Diamond, 100 Years of Japanese American Baseball, and History of Japanese American Baseball in California, and co-produced collegiate-level curriculum. He produced a movie, a 5-year labor of love, entitled American Pastime. This independent film won the 2007 Audience Favorite Award in San Francisco. For the past 19 years, he has been the heart of the nonprofit Nisei Baseball Research Project. The mission of the project is to bring awareness to and educate about Japanese American concentration camps through the prism of baseball. Please give a warm welcome to Carrie Yo Nakagawa. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Thank you, A Walk in Their Shoes, Colin Hansen, all the amazing staff and generals of A Walk in Their Shoes. We want to also thank UWMC tonight for allowing us to share some of our stories. And as Mary Ellen mentioned, I'm a multimedia person, but I think more accurately, I'm a storyteller. Anybody in the arts that are filmmakers, writers, directors, actors, instead of sitting around a fireplace like the hunters and gatherers would telling stories, we do it on a little more sophisticated level. I'm very blessed to be here with Ted Furukawa, Howard Zenimura, Kurt Zenimura, Howard's son. This is our baptismal to Wisconsin, and we certainly are very appreciative to have the community come out and support us. Today we're at the Wildcat Gymnasium with 1,700 kids, and they gave us all tremendous faith back in our youth, and at times you could hear a pin drop in that gymnasium, and so that's a real testament to this community, their parents, their educators, and teachers. My story is I have 4 generations of baseball in my family. My father was kind of considered he threw a 9-inning no-hitter against his high school Layton team. My Uncle Johnny, his brother, was the Nisei Babe Ruth in the 20s and 30s and played for Howard's father, who was the Japanese-American kind of father of baseball. My grandpa worked in a sugarcane plantation in Ola'a, Hawaii, near Hilo on the Big Island, and for 7 days a week he would put wood in the boiler room on the sugarcane plantation, but on one Sunday, 1 day a week, they'd allow him for a couple hours to play baseball. So I was an all-star shortstop for my high school program. My son was an all-star catcher. So like some families that have race car driving family members or professionals or farmers that continue getting the torch, baseball has been a huge dynamic in our family. So tonight I'm so proud to introduce from a baseball standpoint and these baseball family members as well, but also how important the dynamics of all our multimedia projects that, as Mary Ellen mentioned, it comes under the umbrella through the prism of baseball. We try and educate and bring awareness about Japanese American concentration camps through the prism of baseball and all our multimedia projects. So tonight, I'm just so pleased to not only travel with these guys and be with them and hang out with them, but they are walking monuments to this time period and trailblazers and pioneers. I wasn't born until 1954. Way after the camps closed. So the first guest I'd like to introduce you to tonight is Howard Kenso Zenimura. He was born in 1927, the same year his dad, Kenichi Zenimura, the father of Japanese-American baseball, was with my uncle and his Nisei teammates in Fresno on October 29, 1927, defeating Babe Ruth's All-Stars 13-3. The Nisei ball players were all on Lou Gehrig's team, and it was a brilliant way to bring these two baseball icons from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, because in California, we didn't have Major League Baseball till 1958, the San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So to see Ruth and Gehrig in Fireman's Ballpark, and my uncle went 1 for 2, had a stolen base, Howard's dad went 1 for 2, had a stolen base. So much like the Negro Leaguers, they always, whenever they were with Major League Baseball players, they wanted to prove that they had the 5 tools and the heart and passion and could play right with them. After, throughout Howard's youth, he played baseball because of the passion of his father, and his brother also, Harvey Kinshi, was a great baseball player. Well, during World War II, they were at the Gila River, Arizona concentration camp on a Pima Indian sacred land reservation. And one of the biggest upsets in our historian type of minds was when the Tucson Badgers, who hadn't lost in 52 games, had a 3-year state championship record. They had a pitcher, Lowell Bailey, who had a 0.000 ERA, came into their camp. And Tetz was the starting pitcher. Howard was the second baseman, and it was like a Hollywood script. In 10 innings, it was 10-10 in the 10th inning, and Howard's brother Harvey steps up to the plate, takes 3 straight balls, 2 straight strikes, and on the 6th pitch he rips it over the third baseman's head, and the underdog Gila River Eagles beat the Tucson Badgers 11-10 in 10 innings. Then after the war, Howard continued. He became a veteran in the Army, played at the Army baseball team, then went to Fresno State, became a Hall of Famer for the Fresno State baseball program, and then went to Japan and played professional baseball for the Hiroshima Carp at a time when Japan and Hiroshima was trying to rebuild from the devastation of the atomic bomb blast. And so here was Howard, his brother, and 2 other Fresno guys, Fiber Hiroyama, Ben Mitsuyoshi, really raising the spirits of the people with their amazing passion for the game and teaching the American style. And once Howard retired from the Hiroshima Carp, he ended up being a crucial part of the World Boys Baseball League, which took young kids to Brazil, Mexico, China, Japan, Hawaii, and gave them an opportunity to travel this wonderful bridge across the Pacific that his father and he and his brothers really now flows both ways. And so you hear about major leaguers that are playing today, like Ichiro Suzuki, who will be a future Hall of Famer in Cooperstown and also in Japan. Many players on major league rosters from Asia and Japan are really, to me, standing on these guys' shoulders, and hopefully they're plugged into history enough to realize that there were some amazing pioneers that came before them that played for relatively little money, and these guys today are multi-millionaires playing the game that they loved. So tonight, I'm very proud to introduce Howard Kenso Zenimura.
This is a picture of my dad. Apparently been taken before he came to Fresno because he doesn't have a Fresno uniform on. He took a team to Japan in 1924. That's a long time ago. 1927, 1937. So when the war broke out between the United States and Japan, I thought he would be one of the first ones that would be picked up because he went to Japan. He's not an American citizen. So fortunately, he wasn't one of those people that the FBI were looking for. In fact, we were so scared that anything that was Japanese, we had to, we kind of got rid of it. Well, anyway, when the people from Fresno went into a relocation, they were called Assembly Center. There was one in Fresno. There was one in Tulare, which was Mr. Furukawa went to. There was one in Santa Anita Racetrack. There was another one in Turlock. And they were all temporary places to put the Japanese before the permanent home in the interior was built. The one in Fresno, I remember, had a barbed wire fence over 6 feet tall. And inside of the racetrack were blocks of 14 or 13, you had an even number, 14 barracks or 12 barracks to a block, which is block A, B, C, and so on. And we try to make a little comparison of what the barracks were like, and Ted says the same thing. The A-frame on the top of on the roof were there was no partition or nothing, so in the next apartment, you could hear people talking, or if they were snoring, you would hear them snoring. And it went all the way to the end of the building. And since the barracks were built on top of a alfalfa field, well, we had alfalfa coming through to the floor. So we had to cut those every time they grew a little inch or so. And as far as our mattress concerned, Tet's, I don't know, we had a straw mattress. And some of the people that weren't assigned to a barrack, they slept in the, where the horses were kept. But all in all, my father liked baseball so much that he even built a baseball field on the other side of the actual parking lot of the fairground. And he set up also a league. They had a division of A and B teams. And so we played baseball to keep ourselves busy and stay out of trouble, I guess. Even the old timers that used to play baseball before, they even came out to play to keep busy too. And as far as Tet's, I asked you, did you guys play baseball in Tulare? He said no. But there was a team there that came from Guadalupe that was very much, I would say, one of the best teams in the state as far as Japanese team was concerned. Because this team later went to Gila, and they won the first year championship when my dad, when we went to Gila. In fact, the reason why my family went to Gila was that my mother was, she had a lung condition, which was tuberculosis. So the doctor made sure that, she went to a dry area and not to a place where it was very cold and very humid. So the government gave permission for our family to go to Gila, and the rest of the people from Fresno went to Jerome, Arkansas when that opened up. And Jerome, Arkansas is a long ways from Fresno. And when we got to let's see if I can, well, this is a picture of some of you seen it. This is actually one of the blocks of the Gila camp. They had 13 barracks, 1 mess hall, 1 laundry room. There was no washing machine. You had to wash everything by hand. The only thing that they had was, I remember, is the cranking type of to wring out the water. And since top of that would be I learned a new word, latrine, at that time. They call it a men latrine and a lady latrine. And one of the carpenter in that block built a little basketball court on the end. And for lines, we kind of drew a little, with a hole, we made a line. Well, anyway, if you had to go to the latrine, you went from one apartment, which sometimes is a long way for some of the older people, and we learned to use what they call geta. Geta is a wooden shoe that you go into the shower and take the shower with the geta on. There was no, it was just like a gang shower, like, you know, the one that you see in service. And the toilet and the basin where you wash and brush your teeth and so on. Well, the latrine was wide open. There was no partition. So people that sat on those stools or restrooms, there was no privacy. It was wide open. So some of the young girls, I remember, they would only go to the latrine or the restroom at a certain time. Way down at the bottom, you'll see a little section say mess hall. Well, that mess hall was on the latrine and the laundry room, all concrete. And when you poured the cement in a hot area like that, you had to put what they call a mat or something and water it down so that the cement doesn't dry too fast, otherwise it's going to crack. So what we did, those mattresses or mats were all over the place when we went into relocation camp here. One of those barracks is, they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There are 14 barracks to a block, and I think there were about 250 people that living in that one block. And if you can see the number, I still remember my address. Block 28, 13C. This was almost 70 years ago. I still remember the number. And one of those buildings, there's one which is starting with number 1. A apartment was what they call a block manager. I don't know how he got the job. He wasn't voted on, but when we got into this block over here, he was already there. Also, the person who was a mess hall cook was a well-known person in Guadalupe, where Tets came from, and she was a cook for the elementary school. And the people that worked in the mess hall were the people that were living in the block, and they were paid $16 a month. We also had a person that cleaned the laundry room. We also had a person cleaning the ladies' latrine and the men's latrine. And they kept up, you know, the whole block itself, all the people from that area. Well, this is the plan of the block itself. Like I said, there were 250 people about. This is the far left-hand corner is that block that I was showing you. That's where we lived, the corner of this Gila. And there's a little X on the other side of the barbed wire fence. That's where this ballpark was. Now, we weren't supposed to actually go beyond that barbed wire fence, But my dad says, I'm going to build a ballpark there. So we had about 10 of our young guys that were interested in baseball go across that barbed wire fence and start digging what they call sagebrush on the desert. And some of the other kids from the other block would say, hey, what are you doing? He said, we're going to build a ballpark. Pretty soon there would be 10 more guys, another 10 more guys. We had about 50-something people over there cleaning up to knock off the sagebrush. So once they knocked off the sagebrush, they put it in a pile and burned it. I don't know if they knew what we were doing, but the inside of the barbed wire fence is a road that was, well, actually a road that all the supplies were coming into each block. The mail came through there, and sometime we would see the soldiers ride around the camp. But we did it quietly when nobody was seen. So in order to make the backstop, what we did was every other pole of the barbed wire fence is a 4x4. And that 4x4, every other one we took out. And when we took it out, they were connected to make, a backstop. And since we needed something to brace that backstop up, we went to the lumber yard and stole some lumber, 2x4. And when we got enough of it, we buried it out in the desert. And then as we were, as it was needed, we just took it out and supported the 4x4 that was connected to make the backstop. Now, there was no wires. So what they did was, remember I was telling you about the cement padding? The pads were all over the place. We used those pads to build where the screen of the backstop was. So if some of you saw some of the pictures of in the book, well, the backstop were those paddings.
Advance, and you can see that.
What's that?
Advance it so you can see the padding.
Oh, okay. And we go to other figures. That's on the top is Miss Furukawa, and I'm on second base throwing to him. This is some of the kids that played on that field. Now, can you see the backstop back there? Some of it was pretty high. But we use those paddings to make the backstop. And every morning when we got out there, we had to check and see if there was any rattlesnake. Sometime rattlesnake did come into the camp, and especially the women, when they see a rattlesnake, they yell. And when they get into the laundry room, that's where they would go. Well, anyway, that's my dad and myself, sitting out in the outfield grass that we we planted. This is a team that went to Heart Mountain. I think there's only about 4 or 5 of those that are still living now. The rest of them have already passed. My dad is right in the middle in the bottom row. He played too. He caught some games because one catcher was not enough. And when we got to Heart Mountain, we did not go as a group like this. We divided the team into 2 and traveled a different date. Otherwise, you know, people will ask, what are you doing out our way, especially in Salt Lake City. That's, you had a little problem with somebody that was stopped you and asked where you were going. Well, we went in two groups, and there's a guy right in the middle, top row. He was the person that was a financier. He put up the money for us until we got paid from the Heart Mountain people, because when Heart Mountain came into Gila, my dad guaranteed them $700 or $800. Now, where are you going to get $700 or $800 in a camp like that? Well, you got to have somebody backing you up. So he put up the money, and when they, you know, if Heart Mountain made enough money, they paid him back. This is the high school team that played some of the teams that were from that area, and also the most important one was the Tucson High School that Mr. Furukawa pitched against, and he will tell you more about it. And also, if you look in the website, zenimura.com, there is an article about this game. Because we had a reunion there I don't know, about 5-10 years ago. And it's all because of Mr. Nakagawa and his group, which is called the Nisei Baseball Research Project. And a person by the name of Bill Staples, who is also a member of this group. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't even be here today, right, Ted? Correct. I followed him to Phoenix. I followed them to Tucson, but unfortunately, I didn't go to Cooperstown with you. I didn't go to Japan with you. You went to their Hall of Fame, huh?
Go ahead, Kenzo, keep that.
Okay.
We're almost out of time.
That's the Tucson High School team. They even found a letter that my father wrote to the coach, Bill, what's his name? From Stagel. They showed me the letter, and it says, "Was this your dad's letter?" It says, I looked at it, and my dad had his handwriting. I knew it was him, and it was very touching too. So some of you might read about it in the website. I played ball for Fresno State. I didn't have any problem making the team because I played with a lot of the people in camp that had already played with colleges and university. And so every time I tried out for a team, I made the team. Even when I went into the service, I played for a team, and I didn't have any problem. This is when my brother, a person by the name of Ben Yeshioshi, and myself, we played for the Carps. And somehow my father made arrangement with the Carp people, and I think this person by the name of Frank Matsumoto, who was from Fresno and a good friend of my father, had something to do with it too. This is Joe DiMaggio, My brother is on his right, and the other two person is the person from Hiroshima. This is when Joe DiMaggio was married to Marilyn Monroe, and they went on their honeymoon to Japan. What a place to go. My brother would say, man, I just was in a dugout talking to Marilyn Monroe all the time. And he was supposed to be the interpreter. So when Joe DiMaggio was trying to teach them how to bat, well, he was in the dugout with Marilyn Monroe. This is Mr. Miyagi of the Karate Kid. I went to a symposium in Phoenix with Kerry. He set this up too. And we went to the actual, after the, went out into camp where we were living. Everything was gone. Only thing that was there was the cement blocks and the cement mess hall, laundry room. And he has passed away already. And I don't know, he thinks about everything. He brought those two gloves in. You guys two play catch out there for us. And we were playing catch. They also, the Nisei Baseball Research Project also made it possible for some of us to go to Candlestick Park to honor the legends of Japanese American baseball. So many of the Japanese players from California was there, and some of the old timers too. This was taken in spring training of the Oakland Athletic, and they set up 70th year of Zenimura Field in Gila, and Mr. Furukawa, myself, and another ball player that played on that field too. And one of the person there who wearing athletic is the person that played for the Boston Red Sox, and he came to the Oakland Athletic as a relief pitcher. His name was Okajima. And I can't remember the other people. He played, he was playing for the Athletic, but he didn't make it. He was playing for the AAA in Sacramento. And we threw out the first pitch. This was Candlestick too. And way to the right is Mr. Miyagi, Ms. Pat Morita, and some of the players of the, I can't recognize any of them right now. This one is in Fresno, where the AAA Grizzly play, and Mr. Nakagawa has set up to honor the Nisei from the area of Fresno. And his son is there, and my grandson is there. That's it.
Thank you so much, Howard. Our next ball player and good friend and historian, poet, writer is Tetsuo Furukawa. He's an earth person from Los Osos. He lives in Santa Maria now, but he's right next to the California coast and has lived there most of his life. As you saw in the pictures before us, he was the winning pitcher of the Gila River Eagles against the Tucson Badgers. He played for his Army team, played for a semi-pro team after that. He is 88 years young, a tremendous inspiration to me as a writer, as a historian, and he's a poet, and he keeps expanding all his crafts as the years go by. So I'm very honored to introduce Tets Furukawa.
Before I do this skit, can I tell them what I'm going to do up there?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to perform a little skit, so please bear with me a minute. Back in 1942, when we were going to leave our homes and to be incarcerated, we were ordered to take whatever you can carry, and usually it was 2 suitcases. My parents bought me 1 suitcase, but my mother had put together a duffel bag for me. And in these 2 containers, I took all my worldly belongings. And that was back in April 29, 1942. Are we going to show the DVD now? Back in April 29, 1942, when we left our home, we assembled in my hometown of Guadalupe to board the Greyhound buses to take us to the Tulare Fairgrounds Assembly Center. I found out later that our 8th grade teacher had a movie camera and was recording our leaving for the camps, and it's only 5 minutes long. I was given this tape years later. When I saw it, I thought it would be nice if I could write something to accompany the movie. So a friend said, I'll put the footage and what I wrote and put some Japanese background music together. So that is what we want to show you right now. Immediately following Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, many Japanese immigrant men living on the West Coast were quickly rounded up by the FBI and incarcerated in camps in Missoula, Montana, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Bismarck, North Dakota. With a majority of fathers interned, many families were at a loss as how to manage closing their businesses and farms before leaving for their assigned assembly centers. As a result, unsuspecting families fell prey to a number of unscrupulous people, which resulted in tremendous personal financial loss and fear. Being told that they could carry only 2 suitcases, they had little choice but to sell a lifetime of belongings at unjustly low prices. As shown by this video taken by Frank R. Johnson, District Superintendent of the Guadalupe Joint Union School District, on April 29, 1942, under President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Executive Order number 9066, and under full force of federal law, all people of Japanese ancestry living in Guadalupe, California, were transported to the Tulare Fairgrounds Assembly Center located in Central California. U.S. Army soldiers were instructed to oversee and control the evacuation and to help load the Greyhound buses. The caravan, escorted by military personnel, took approximately 5 to 6 hours to reach its destination. Once the buses arrived, the evacuees were shocked to learn that their new home would consist of old horse stables and loosely constructed barracks, which were surrounded by 10-foot fencing and secured by guard towers and armed sentries. 4 months later, residents of Tulare were then transferred to Gila River, Arizona, an internment camp located on the Gila River Indian Reservation south of Phoenix, Arizona, where they would stay through most of World War II, while many Americans continued to look upon them with fear and hatred. April 29, 1942 is truly a day, I believe, many Japanese Americans will remember as a day of infamy, and that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. The Gila River Relocation Center War Memorial was built and later dedicated to the people of Gila River on April 23, 1944, to honor the young men and women who served our country during World War II. Specifically, the 23 brave soldiers who made the supreme sacrifice of dying for their country, including residents of Gila River who were originally from Guadalupe. Technician 4th grade Ben Satoshi Kurokawa and Private Makoto Yoshihara, who received the Bronze Star for his service to his country. What you saw right now, well, the Fifth Amendment of the Bill of Rights states that nor shall any person be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. We're all citizens of the United States, but the government forgot its own laws and incarcerated the Japanese. It was a sad time. Now to push this.
Yeah, put it on here. Yeah.
This photo shows the Gila River Relocation Center back in 1942 to 1945. It was located south of Phoenix on the Gila River Indian Reservation, home of the Pima Indians in Casa Grande Valley, Pinal County, Arizona. Gila River Camp became the 4th largest town or city in Arizona. Phoenix first, Tucson second, and another internment camp called Poston was number 3, and Gila River followed with 15,000 population. This photo celebrating the 70th anniversary of the opening of Zenimura Field in Gila River. We celebrated the 70th anniversary a few years ago in Phoenix. And I wanted to honor our coach, Zenimura. And I wanted to write 2 haikus for this occasion. And haikus were a type of poetry that began in Japan in 1600. And over the years, and when it approached about 1880, it became real refined. And they changed the name to haiku, H-A-I-K-U. It's a 3-liner poetry. The first line contains 5 syllables, followed by 7 syllables, and ends with 5 syllables, for a total of 17 syllables. Zenimura Field, Gila Camp's finest pastime, 70 years past. Known as Coach Zenny, always with respect and love. Man strict but gentle. This is our high school team that we were able to beat the state champion Tucson Badgers. Like Kerry said, I pitched the whole 10 innings, and people asked me, how many pitches did you throw? And I said, I can't remember, because nowadays in the major leagues, a pitcher goes in and pitches 5, 6 innings, the manager takes him out, and puts in a left-handed reliever, a right-hand reliever, and puts in a closer. And all told, it might throw 100 pitches. Who knows how much it is? But I kind of thought that maybe I threw 155 pitches because they were hitting my balls all over the field. This photo was taken of me when I was 17 years old, when the Gila team visited Hart Mountain, Wyoming, with another relocation camp that was about 1,500 miles. We rode a rickety Santa Fe Trailways bus, and it probably took us 2 days to get there. And as I recall, some of the windows were not closed, so it was air conditioned. Some of the seats were worn out, and you couldn't sleep because the springs are pushing you up. And along that trip, we were accosted by Caucasians. They looked at us and they knew that we were Japanese, and they said, "What are you guys doing over here?" Yeah, we're Japanese. We just left the internment camp in Arizona. But because of the war effort and there's a lack of labor, we're going to Montana and Wyoming to help with the potato and the sugar beet harvest. They said, "Oh yeah, well that sounds good," well, so they let us go. The game that we played with the Tucson Badgers, Kerry has already talked about it, but this, the gentleman with the white shirt is Lowell Bailey. He had an incredible 0.00 ERA. And in 1944, I think there was 3 other pitchers in the whole United States, high school, that had a similar record with Lowell Bailey. And the fellow next to him is yours truly.
What was your ERA?
They'll know.
When we celebrated the 70th anniversary of Denimura Field, from Phoenix, we took a trip back to Gila River. And the sportscaster, newspaper man from Japan, he wanted to see the Denimura Field, so he and I went out. What you could see right now, it became an olive orchard. So we went in here, and he asked me where was home plate. So I looked around, and I said, oh, it must be around here. So he stood on home plate, and he said, you were the pitcher 7 years ago. He says, go back to the pitcher's mound. So I went out there, stepped it out, and went out to the pitcher's mound, and he said, now get a clod of dirt and throw it at me. So that's when he took my picture. Maybe I should have shown this photo a little while ago, but when we left our hometown and we went to the Tulare Fairgrounds Assembly Center, this is what we were confronted with. These were old stables. They housed horses for many years. But when they found out the Japanese were coming here, they chased the horses out, and they shoved the Japanese into these horse stables. So you just think about it right now, and you think, gee, this is just a stench of inhumanity. But that's what really happened. This photo was taken 2 weeks before we left our home. My father was picked up in February. The FBI came and picked up my father and accused him of sending Morse code messages to the submarines off the Pacific coast, which is, the ocean was only about 7 miles from our home. And they said that, well, we lived in an old schoolhouse, and we had like a 20-foot power pole with the lights on top, and then on the backyard, we also had a similar lighting, because back those days, we used the outhouse, and the bathroom was outside. And so when 7 people living in the house, you could just about imagine how many times we went in and went out, and that's every time that we did that, we flicked the light on, we flicked the light off. Not only going to the bathroom, outhouses, but also go to take our bath. The same thing happened. And a lot of the times our friends would come over, so we put the front light on, and then after they came in the house, we put the light off. So that kept on night after night, and we didn't know that the FBI was watching. But sooner, when Pearl Harbor happened, the FBI came and took my father away and accused him of sending messages to the Japanese submarines. Mm-hmm. And also, when I see this photo, my mother said we didn't know what the future was going to be. Our father was at North Dakota in the camp, Fort Lincoln, North Dakota. And we were ordered to leave our house on April the 29th, and this is about 2 weeks before we left our home. My mom said, let's all take a picture, and then we'll send it to Papa, and to assure him that we were all okay. But when I see this picture, I recall things about my mother, and that when the last day in our home, in the last hour that we spent in our home, she told some of us to go out and clean the yard, pick up all the trash. And the others, she gave us a broom to sweep out all the rooms. Then we found our mother starting in the kitchen. She had a pail of water with a mop, mopping the floor and et cetera. And said, come on, Mama, we gotta leave. We have to be in town to catch the bus. She said, I'll be through in a minute. And when she did come out, she said, no matter under what conditions, we're getting forced out of our home, but we don't want to leave a dirty, messy house for the next people coming in. Because that would commit haji, H-A-J-I. It's a word, strong word in Japanese that means shame. And my parents were taught in Japan never to do anything to bring shame onto your family. This is a monument you had seen before, but at the end I mentioned two fellows from my hometown. One was killed in the European Theater War, and they're all friends of ours. And Ben Kurokawa, he was a Japanese translator for the U.S. Army, and they loaded a transport plane from somewhere in Japan, and they were on their way to Okinawa. And there was a malfunction on the plane, and it crash landed, and all the members passed away. And that happened on the next to last day of the war, on August the 13th, 1945. Then in 1972, I took a trip, and I took my wife and 3 kids, and we visited Gila River. And you can notice on the knoll that remains of the concrete, of the picture that I had showed you before. It still stands right now, and I'm very impressed with the people of the neighboring towns. They take their students out there because other people come and write graffitis and things out there. But the Indian nation ask Caucasian kids or whoever that want to volunteer to come out to this monument, and with soap and water and things, they scrub everything down so it'd be nice looking for the other tourists to come and see. A Diamond in the Desert, I was interviewed for that book, and we were going to have a book signing in my hometown in Santa Maria, California. And on that weekend, the author, who is on the top, Catherine Fitzmaurice, she could not make it from Orange County because she had to go to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, because her son was enrolled at the facilities, and they were having some big festivities there. So she went there, and I conducted the book signing of The Diamond of the Desert in my hometown. And this was made by a friend of mine as a announcement. And they put these on the store window so people could come, like you are here today, to maybe purchase a book, or you could ask questions or whatever. The Diamond in the Desert, immediately, I don't know how they do it, but then this book was able to print scholastics on the front cover. And if you get that rating, then I hear that all the libraries through the school libraries throughout the country will know about your book, and probably that's what's happened here in Wausau. But this book had she received a lot of awards, all the way from New York City to UCLA in Los Angeles. Last year, I had a phone call from the Smithsonian Institute from Washington, D.C., and they're now trying to gather artifacts about the camp days, because this coming year in 2017 is going to be the 75th anniversary of President Roosevelt Executive Order 9066. And next year, from February to November, 10 months, they're going to have an exhibit of all the artifacts that they could gather during 1942 and 1945. And thanks to Mr. Nakagawa over here, they found out about my baseball uniform that I wore in Gila River. And I think one of the reasons they were interested in my uniform because there were one that used this uniform was still alive, and then maybe he might be able to answer a few questions. So if you want to ever see this uniform, I can't show it to you because you'll have to go to the Smithsonian Institute, and they'll have an exhibit this coming year. That is what the uniform looks like. And the player swinging the bat is me, and I don't know if you could tell if it's a home run or a strikeout, but he looks good. This is just another poster that the Smithsonian had sent out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tets. Over the 19 years with our Nisei Baseball Research Project, I have a shameless plug. If you'd like to find out more information, it's www.niseibaseball.com, N-I-S-E-I. And we have a Nisei Baseball Research Project Facebook page for more updated information. But over the 19 years, not only have I been able to be in such honor of such great pioneers, we've accumulated a lot of different, what I call my highlight reel, of different events, footage. I'm going to show you a quick highlight reel of some of the moving images of baseball being played in the camps, which was rare because they wouldn't allow you to take any cameras in, especially a movie projector camera. You'll see many Nisei pioneers, almost all of them that you'll be seeing are gone. That generation is practically all disappeared, and I still, probably much like you guys, this generation was absolutely the greatest generation ever for their sacrifice, for their hardships. And for today, to see all the kids at the Wildcat Auditorium, I had a couple takeaways that I hope they were impacted by and I hope that they go home with, was that never ever take for granted your civil liberties. Never take for granted our Constitution. These two men are examples, and their families, my families, where the Constitution and our civil liberties really just shut down and didn't work. I always say that history doesn't change, only the names do. And after 9/11, Japanese Americans were under no threat or hostility or racial profiling, but I guarantee if you're Arab American, Muslim American, Armenian American, you felt that hostility, you felt that xenophobia. And in today's world, we're dealing with the Syrian refugees and immigrants and Mexican immigrants coming over the border, and again, this hysteria is starting to build again. So hopefully our students today and young adults, every generation becomes more educated and progressive, and so hopefully they took away something very positive, inspirational, that these gentlemen certainly give to all of us. So at this point, I'd like to show our pioneer highlight, and thank you again.
It may come as some surprise to learn that Japanese immigrants actually brought the game here with them after it had been introduced in Japan by an American teacher back in 1873. And though there were no Japanese Americans in the big leagues, they had their own leagues. And during World War II, the team Bill Tsukamoto was on faced World Series pitcher Spud Chandler.
He's a control pitcher, and he tried to hang a curveball. right where I could see it, so I went with the pitch and
Got a triple, eh?
yeah.
But most of the ball-playing Japanese Americans did during the war took place in internment camps. This model is of the one in Gila River, Arizona. Herb Karima played on that field, and though this treatment of American citizens could easily have embittered him, it wasn't something he dwelt on.
We never talk those things. There was a politician, they're the one that talked about it.
Instead, he and his buddies played ball, hoping to bring some measure of joy and entertainment to those in the camp. Every ball player had a nickname, of course. Herb's was Moon. The reason?
My old man used to make moonshine.
90-year-old Shizuto Kawamura says they built their own field of dreams.
Sort of a homemade scraper and flatten the ground out, And of course, there'll be a lot of pebbles, rocks, and everything in the field.
For immigrant communities isolated by color barriers, it gave a sense of unity. In 1923, Takeo Utsumi was a bat boy. Later, he earned a famous nickname.
They couldn't pronounce my name. These guys didn't associate with Japanese. So Lou said, well, just call him Babe.
And then Babe got a chance to see the Babe, an exhibition game with the Slugger and Lou Gehrig.
I remember when Babe Ruth and Gehrig came to Stockton. Oh, yeah. And they wouldn't call him out on anything. We said, one more, until he hit one over the fence and everybody go, hey.
Slight stature and discrimination may have prevented some players from any chance of making it to the big leagues. Then the war dashed all hope. And from behind the wire of an internment camp was the only place they could play ball. Diamonds in the rough who made their mark on the mound. Rusty Dornan, CNN, San Francisco.
Yeah, I started playing ball when I was 9 years old. For a century ago. I organized a Asahi team. And then I played with the Asahi for about 20 years.
This picture was taken, I can't remember what year it was. I'm so ancient, so I can't remember these things. But the New York Yankees made an exhibition trip through Japan after their regular season. And at that time, I was on the Japanese team that was playing the Yankees. And I happened to be asked to try to translate for Mr. Stengel. And hell, I couldn't understand what he was saying, let alone, trying to translate it. But that's where this picture came from.
He asked me to help make a diamond and organize the teams. That was in Assembly, Fresno Assembly first. Then we went to Arkansas, Jerome, Arkansas. We made the all-star team. We played many outside teams. Well, terrific. Well, I think all the people, especially East State people, they know only baseball instead of basketball or football. So I think I'm very happy that we made team for them to see, outside team.
1920 to the 40s, World War II interrupted their dreams, though. They were sent to camps. Most never returned to baseball. One player had tears in his eyes today as he talked about finally being remembered.
All my kids are here, my brothers and sisters. I think they're my family. There's almost 30 of us here.
Is it wonderful, though, to see the honor they're paying to the Japanese American players?
I'm very happy, yes.
Walk out onto the field and you hear the roar of the crowd of over 50,000 people, I ask you to take a second and look toward the sky and know that your teammates are with you and that the other legends in the sky are here with you today as well on our own field of dreams.
Much. A couple other quick things that our MBRP are crusading is to get Major League Baseball and Major League teams to recognize many of our players that played in the 20s and 30s that had the 5 tools, they had the passion, but they just never got an opportunity. And then World War II comes, and many players had opportunities to play Major League Baseball, but again, that opportunity never happened. So we're really trying to get them to recognize the pioneers in the 20s and 30s that played in the 40s, that were tremendous athletes, tremendous ball players, and hopefully their story services that Major League Baseball one day recognize. So thanks so much. Thank you, Colin.
And again, wonderful opportunity not only to hear their presentation today at Edgar School District. And he did say the Wildcats numerous times, and I don't think Marathon or Athens or Stratford really appreciated that, but it was good.
Okay.
So the Edgar people were happy with that. But no, have an opportunity to ask a question, raise your hand, and I'll run with a mic before we call it an evening and stuff. So definitely, sir, and then I'll come right here.
These are mics right here.
Yeah, but I can't hear some of it.
How long were the people that were assigned to the horse barns, how long do they have to stay there before they got decent housing?
Well, they took about 6 months to build the assembly centers, or not really build them. They just, the government figured out that there was a county fairground in every region, so they put them in these horse stalls or temporary barracks for 6 months, and then as they built the permanent camps throughout the different 10 states, then they were able to ship them to the permanent camps. I don't know, Teds could answer this, how long he stayed at Tulare.
Was that?
How long did you stay at the Tulare Assembly?
We entered Tulare Fairgrounds Assembly Center on April 29, 1942, and when the camp was maybe 7/8 completed at Gila River, the internment center, they start moving the evacuees to Gila River, and we got there in August of 1942. But when we got there, all the trenches were still open. The pipelines, sewer lines were not completed yet, and a lot of the barracks were still being erected. So we went into a camp that was not really ready for the people.
How did you guys get to leave the camps with the buses and that? How did you finagle that or whatever to let them allow you to leave to go to the other camps?
How did you leave
to play
Gila River?
To work
back home.
I.
Oh, to play baseball.
Would you answer a little bit, Alice?
Well, they traveled in small groups so they wouldn't create a lot of attention. So they got on trains and buses. And yeah, ironically, if you had a person, a relative that died and was outside the camp, you couldn't attend their service. But by putting on a baseball uniform, it gave you this amnesty or free passage to go from Gila River, Arizona, all the way to Hart Mountain, Wyoming. And vice versa, Hart Mountain, Wyoming came to Gila River to play these guys on a rubber match tournament.
Like I said, the coach had work permits for us. And like I said, we confronted any kind of a problem. We told them we're willing and able, and we're going to Wyoming or Montana to help with the harvest. And
you know, Gila had 3 different teams come into Gila to play. Hart Mountain came, There was another camp called Amachi and Poston. And I know that my dad tried to raise money for these teams to come here or come to Gila. And it's amazing what he did to try and see if he can raise his money. If you look at the back, the grandstand, what we call, well, it was section A, B, C, and D, and so on, and he would measure off every so often a number, and those people that donated money, he would give them the best seat.
And Amachi, Colorado, that's what Howard just talked about. I mean, Colorado and Wyoming, those are pretty long distances to Arizona. So that was quite a road trip.
Hi, my name's Henry Kanemoto. I was born in Gila River.
Wow.
I can't hear.
He was born, Henry.
I was there with you in Gila River. I was born in Gila River, December 31st, 1943. My mother is Yoshia Kanemoto. My father is Minoru Kanemoto. They were both born in the United States. My mother was born in Phoenix, Arizona. So she was a natural-born U.S. citizen. My father was born in Watsonville, California. They were taken to a racetrack or a stables in the San Francisco area, held there, and then they went to Gila River. And my father actually played baseball in high school, but I think he was much too old at that time to be on your team, but he's always been interested in baseball. So I've heard stories about Gila River. My birth certificate says Rivers, Arizona, which is what, it was called at that time. It wasn't called the Gila River, although I was born in a camp hospital. It was not, didn't say anything about Gila River. It just says Rivers, Arizona. So well, that's one of the reasons I came here. And you mentioned Hiroshima. And the interesting thing with Japanese is that they're adaptable. And my uncle on my mother's side lived just outside of Hiroshima. And on the day that the A-bomb was dropped, he happened to miss school. And so he was not killed in the explosion. And from what my mother tells me, the Japanese didn't know what happened. And they called the bomb Pikadon, for Pika, bright light, and then Don, for the noise that it made. And that's how they described the A-bomb. It was Pikadon. And so my uncle went and looked at Hiroshima and just found the only things that were standing were telephone poles that were askew, some chimneys, and the adaptable part is that once my parents got out of camp, they brought him to the United States, and he joined the U.S. Army. Now here's a fellow who nearly got bombed by the A-bomb, and he joins the U.S. Army, goes over to Korea, and the reason he did that was because there was nothing for him in Japan, and he's a bright fella, and so he wanted the GI Bill. So after he got out of the Army, he got an electrical engineering degree, then he got a master's from Caltech in electrical engineering. He worked in the defense industry for used aircraft, and he worked at, so here's a kid who almost gets destroyed in the A-bomb, comes over to the United States, fights for the United States, then he works in the defense industry for the United States. Now, if that's not being adaptable, I don't know what is. Yeah. And So I just thought I would tell you my story.
Thank you.
If I can go on just a second longer, my parents were released early from camp. Have you heard of Seabrook, New Jersey?
All right.
Yeah. So Charles Seabrook owned a frozen food plant in New Jersey. And during the war, everybody left. They had no workers. So Charles Seabrook went to Washington, D.C. He talked to the general who was the head of the internment camps, and the general agreed to release the Japanese early, before the end of the war. And there's nothing of strategic importance in the middle of New Jersey. And so they went there and worked, and I believe at that time we had about 3,000 Japanese in New Jersey. So it was one of the largest concentrations of Japanese. And you can imagine what happened. For this audience, they know what happened when the Hmong came here. 97% white. My kids felt a lot of discrimination. I'm Japanese. I came well before the Hmong arrived, but there was a lot of prejudice. And you can imagine what happened in New Jersey when you have 100% white population and you've got 3,000 Japanese that come in. So there was a tremendous amount of prejudice. And what Charles Seabrook did was very interesting. He took two armored cars. He was a very forward-thinking individual. He took two armored cars, went to the Philadelphia Mint, filled them up with silver dollars. My dad was earning 50 cents an hour. They got paid every 2 weeks. So he came home with 80 silver dollars in his pocket. And he hated them because the older people know that turned your pockets black from the silver. But what it did was, all of a sudden, there were silver dollars in the community. And the storekeepers didn't know what to do with them. There was no place to put a silver dollar. And they realized that all these silver dollars came from the Japanese that were working at Seabrook Farms. And from what my father tells me, from that point on, the level of prejudice went down because they realized that the Japanese there were working. They were working for the war effort, and they were bringing money into the community.
Nice.
So I bet you never thought you would meet somebody that was in Gila River in Wausau, Wisconsin.
And you know what? You're very lucky to be here. Because of the conditions of the hospitals in all these 10 camps, we have some relatives that were born in camp too, and I always look at them as in amazement that their survival rate, and to be able to be with us today, you're a survivor. So thank you.
I am, and I tell my kids I would be much smarter except for camp food that my mother had to eat. And it's going to be my 50th reunion this year, graduating from Stanford University.
Congratulations.
In 1966 is when I graduated.
Wow.
And so to be born in the United States, and my parents coming out of camp penniless, then getting the opportunity to go to a world-class university, which was founded, by the way, by a robber baron. And it just shows you, you know, we do have our faults. We're not perfect, but we're a lot better than any other country. And I don't know any other country that would have given me the opportunity to do what I do, other than the United States. I mean, if I was Japanese in Korea or China, in fact, one of my uncles was captured in Russia, and he spent time in a Siberian prison as a Japanese prisoner of war. So it's interesting, the kind of thing that America does provide for us. Thank you.
You got a couple more questions.
He looked Oriental too, Japanese.
I was so impressed with the way when the Japanese Americans were asked to leave their homes, how peaceful it was. Was that all the time? Because there's so much violence in the world. Did they just leave peacefully and no fighting? And
She was amazed that there was no rebellion or violence when you guys had to go to camp. You want to talk on that?
Before the camp?
No,
In camp?
right before. You know, my answer to that, they'll address it, but when we were filming American Pastime in the Utah desert, I remember Sarah Drew, you might know her as an actress on, it's a medical show, Grey's Anatomy. She analyzed what we were talking about in my book, and she said that, I made a quote that, you know, this could never happen to the Sansei generation. You know, my parents were Nisei, American-born. Their parents were born in Japan. And I said the Sansei are too radical, and they would have never went into the camps. And she goes, Carrie, isn't it amazing that because the Sansei generation that came 10 years later after the war ended, that your parents and that generation never wanted to burden that generation with what they went through. Because if they would have been very radical and bitter and angry, think how your generation would have been. Really radical and really angry and violent. And I never looked at it that way till she pointed it out, and it's true. That's why they're the greatest generation, because they wanted to make sure our generation wasn't burdened with their hardships or sacrifice, that we could be professionals, we could advance ourselves as high as we wanted to. And then, of course, my kids and my granddaughter now will have a great world. So I can't speak on behalf of Howard and Tets, but I certainly can speak on the majority of the Nisei that they weren't going to be violent and they weren't going to be very radical in what the government asked them to do. They were going to prove how loyal they were. My grandmother had a restaurant, and she told my mother on the train ride to Arkansas with blinders on both sides that, you know, my mom was concerned, what's going to happen to us? Just like in Germany, are we going to have to face the ovens and go through a Holocaust? And my grandmother, who was a very progressive woman, smoked a long stem cigarette in her restaurant that she owned. And for a woman in the 20s and 30s to smoke anywhere was taboo. But she was a businesswoman, and she told my mom on the train that this is the greatest country in the world. We wouldn't be here unless we were here in America. So we'll prove how loyal we are. We'll have to go. All immigrants have to pay a price. This is the price we have to pay. So we'll go in, prove how loyal we are, and then come back. Unfortunately, my grandma died of cancer in Arkansas, and this is one of my tragic stories. I have two, tragedy, inspiration. When they sent her body to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, because they didn't have a cemetery in the Jerome, Arkansas camp, they cremated her, and then a couple months later in a Folgers coffee can, my mother got in her barrack her mother's ashes. And on the top of her ashes was a piece of paper. So my mom opened it up thinking it was my grandmother's name, and all it said on it was Jap woman. So the inhumanities didn't even stop with her death, because all my mom could think about was this great speech of how this was the greatest country in the world and all immigrants have to pay a price. The inspiration is when my family came back from Arkansas 3.5 years later. Here were the McClurgs and the Ravens to pick up my family at the train station, and they had been egged and spit on because they were friends to my family, so the racists and bigots pelted them with eggs and spit on them. So they take them back 6.5 hours back to our 20-acre grape ranch and presented my grandfather with a cigar box. And so my dad and my uncle were happy that they were going to get to smoke a stogie for their return. And when Grandpa Raven opened up the box, it was full of cash. So not only did the Ravens and the McClurgs look after our 20-acre grape ranch, they gave them back the profits it made for 3.5 years. unbelievable. Most people don't know this story. Most Japanese Americans lost, 98% of them lost everything, their homes, their businesses, their college educations. In our case, because of the love of neighbors, you know, the McClurgs and Ravens are still very close to our family and always will be.
I'm sure that most of all the parents, when we went into camp, they were worried about the kids, hoping that they don't join gangs. And you know what that means? Gangs don't get along with other gangs, and they'll be fighting and whatever. So I think that we owe a lot to Howard Zanimura's father, who is nowadays known as the father of Japanese American baseball in the United States. It was he that built a baseball stadium in Gila River, and he encouraged all the youngsters to come and practice baseball, play baseball, and etc., and to create a positive social atmosphere, and gave everyone hope, joy, and normalcy to their lives. So for myself, I'm very proud. I've known Howard Zanimura from when we went into Gila River, and we've been friends for over 70 years. We see each other every once in a while. We call each other back and forth on the phone. And today we find ourselves here in Wausau. Hooray!
If it wasn't for baseball, I don't think I would have known this person over here, because he lived on the other side of the camp, and I never went down to that end. And as far as baseball is concerned, we played in Gila all year round. We had a winter league, we had a summer league, and during the summertime, we don't play in that hot, weather where it's 116 degrees temperature. We played what they call twilight. The game started at 5:30, and what the fans would come is they have the dinner at 5 o'clock, and as soon as they finished dinner, they would rush to the ballpark. And as far as the players are concerned, the mess hall person who is in charge were even kind enough for the players to eat with the mess crew, so that they can get to the ballpark on time to warm up and start the game. And during the winter time, we would play in the regular afternoon or in the morning. So we had a league for the older person, and even some of the younger kids that we would say B League or whatever it is. So we kept busy. Otherwise, I would have been probably a juvenile delinquent over there. Because we were only 15, 16, 17 years old. And I remember, my brother and I, at that time, what they call a zoot suit. The zoot suit gang, they had they wear these pants that had with a choke ankle, and my brother came home one day and he says, "Mom, can you make one of those pants for me?" Said, "My mother won't do it." Well, it was, and there was another time that I was telling Ted Furukawa, I said, when you had a school dance or something, I had dated a girl that was living on the other side of the camp. And when I took her back at 11 o'clock or 11:30, man, it was scary coming home. because I live almost, on the other side of camp by the corner of Gila. So it was, baseball kept us alive as far as I was concerned. We even competed against the other camp too. Gila had two camps. One was called Canal, the other one called Butte. So Camp 1, which is Canal, had block 1 to 27. And then Butte Camp had block 28, which I was in the first block at 28, and they went all the way up to 70-something.
75.
75. And in that area of 75 was the administration and the hospital. Only time I went to the hospital was I visited my grandfather that passed away over there because of cancer. And after he came, he was taken to the hospital from Fresno Assembly Center. He passed away within a couple of months, I think. And they cremated his body, and Grandma had kept his ashes from Gila. They relocated to Seabrook, New Jersey, and then after the war ended, they came back to Fresno and had him buried in Fresno. So, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not at all, not at all. The nice thing is being able to drive these gentlemen around, and the stories are endless, and it makes the trip go a lot faster when we go to these schools and stuff like that. But again, another round of applause for these gentlemen. A round of applause for the gentleman who was born in Gila River, too. Tetz had brought 1,000 cranes from California, and today he distributed 12 strings of 50 cranes, and tomorrow he'll do another 5. And then on Wednesday, he's going to give another 2 over in Medford. And so we have one more to hand out to complete the 1,000 crane ring. And we have been blessed to have events here at UW Marathon County for many years. And so we want Tetz to present to Dean Keith Montgomery one of the strings to commemorate tonight's event and to continue that string of good fortune and stuff for years on end.
Let me read this first.
You can have the mic, sir.
Thank you. I brought 1,000 cranes, and the way Colin Hansen has given them away, I should have brought 10,000 more. These 1,000 paper cranes are hereby presented to Colin Hansen, all the administrators, teachers, and students of Central Wisconsin as a gesture of good fortune and in appreciation for inviting and hosting this gathering, and also in commemorating the 74th anniversary of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt Executive Order number 9066. In gratitude by Kerry Yo Nakagawa, Howard Zenimura, and myself, and friends who are with us in spirit. These cranes were made by a friend of mine, a lady friend from Hiroshima. The bomb, she was 6 years old when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, but safely enough, though she was about 100 miles away from the epicenter, so she was alive and well, and she had come to my hometown, and she started making cranes, and she made thousands and thousands of cranes, and I had recently asked her, how many cranes have you made already? She says, I don't really know, I don't count them, but then she said that I'm so used to making the cranes, as long as I cut the papers out and leave it in front of me, I watch television and make paper cranes at the same time. So I thought, oh, maybe you have made about maybe 250,000, and she was kind of smiling at me. Yeah. And to celebrate this occasion here for all of us, I wrote 2 haikus for this special occasion. I didn't know too much about Wisconsin, so I looked at the map and I saw that it was surrounded by the Mississippi River, Lake Superior, and Lake Michigan. So I wrote, a far Wisconsin, new joy and experience, cows roaming around. So I wanted to also bring a little taste of the internment camp days for all of us 74 years ago. So I came with this. Our camp was called Gila River Relocation Center on the Arizona desert. Gila Camp Sunset, glorious colors spanning, desolate desert. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Again, I appreciate all the support that we've had over the years and stuff like that, and to look back and to continuously look forward. These events with the group of A Walk in Their Shoes and the support with Mr. Gene Montgomery, UWMC, and also the different schools that participate. It's amazing to think that 20 school districts will be coming together for 3 days, rivals on the playing field, but yet friends in the classroom. But also, too, it's because of the sponsors. And when you look back, we started with 14 sponsors, and those 14 have stayed with us and have encouraged another 36 to join us. So I'd like to read the list of sponsors that have helped us. Edgar American Legion and VFW, the American Legion Riders, Souls of Honor, Wausau American Legion, the American Legion Marathon County Council, Stratford VFW, Athens VFW, the Vietnam Veterans of America, the Dudley Foundation, Young's Pharmacy, Sport and Spine of Edgar, Edgar PTO, Marathon Cheese Corporation, Badger Basket, MPNC, the Edgar Area JCs, Edgar Lyons, Joan and Jane Heil, Color Vision, CCT, Controlled Concepts Technology, Wisconsin Public Radio, UW Marathon County, the Wausau School District, Edgar Area Educational Foundation, Berg Sales, ACB Advantage Community Bank, NWA Northwestern Wisconsin Associates, Dan Service Plus, BAME Insurance, Rotary of Wausau, St. Andrew Lutheran Church, Dennis Blunk, Sean and Tammy Cummings, Fenwood Lions, Lens Auto of Athens, Clover Belt Credit Union, First Impressions, People State Bank, Yankees Bookstore, Judd S. Alexander Foundation, Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin, the B.A. and Esther Greenheck Foundation. And so a round of applause for all those sponsors. But again, thank you very much for coming tonight.